add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often, if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host for Hiring on All Cylinders, Sean Simerly. It's been a little bit. Things have been a little busy on our end over here in San Francisco. In fact, we just moved into some new digs, some new office space in the financial district, which has taken just a tiny bit of energy. And in that time, some other really exciting news has come out, which I'm sure you have undoubtedly seen. So to talk about that news, I'm actually joined today with kind of an all-star cast, if you will. We were actually just talking about hip hop and rap artists from back in the day. Cue Mace real quick. But to talk about East versus West, also just about what's next, I have John Bischke, CEO and co-founder of Entelo, as well as Danielle Weinblatt, founder of ConveyIQ. And I'm joined with them today to talk about some really exciting news. So John, Danielle, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Sean.
Fantastic.
So why don't we get this ball rolling? Why are we on the show with the two of you? John, can I just maybe start with a really broad question there?
Yeah, we have some big news that we're announcing today, which is the acquisition of Entelo acquiring ConveyIQ, and we're very excited to bring ConveyIQ into the Entelo family, and we'll talk about that on the podcast today. And then in part alongside that, we're also announcing new funding today. So it's a big day here at Entelo. We're very excited about the future and wanted to have Danielle on the podcast to be able to talk more about ConveyIQ's background and for us to share our vision for the future of the company.
Awesome. Well, then I guess why don't we start there? Danielle, could you maybe tell our listeners, I'm sure many are familiar with ConveyIQ, but maybe talk to us about what led you to form what eventually became ConveyIQ, and talk to me about that process.
Sure. So many people remember the first company that I started, which is actually now a part of ConveyIQ. The name of that company was Take the Interview, or TTI, if you like acronyms. And I started that company based on my experience with high volume campus recruiting. So I was a very, can I say, gung-ho investment banker.
You can definitely say that.
Which is like really embarrassing to admit. But I loved my job when I graduated from college. I guess that's also why I became an entrepreneur. I really like things that are incredibly challenging, where you want to bang your head against the wall every single day, because it can be that miserable to most human beings. But I started off my career in investment banking, and because I loved my job so much, they made me the face of diversity for Citigroup. So as a woman investment banker, I would travel around to all the college campuses talking about why there should be more women in finance and women at Citigroup. And so I did this for my entire tenure while I was there. So it was really active in campus recruiting. And, I noticed a ton of inefficiencies while I was doing that. The fact that they would give you a big fat resume book and you couldn't tell from the resume who you wanted to actually meet in person. Or you would meet someone and you would know in the first few minutes of meeting them that they weren't a right fit. And for me as a young banker, that meant the difference between leaving the office at maybe 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. if I had a series of bad interviews. So fast forward, I actually met another San Francisco entrepreneur, Andrew Paradise, in Harvard Square right before I had started business school. And he inspired me to think a little bit more broadly about challenges and problems I had faced. And I couldn't think of anything more annoying than the recruitment process, particularly for campus. And so that was pretty early. That was around the time that people were just talking about the proliferation of video and talking about how LinkedIn could become a big thing. And so the first company that I started did was take the interview, which I felt was a better way to screen candidates because you could ask them your most important questions and in a proctored way, so in a time setting, they could answer those key targeted questions. And at that time, I envisioned everyone taking the interview from a job description and no longer having to submit resumes. So I know that was pretty crazy and it wasn't exactly the way the vision unfolded, but my belief was that the resume was becoming increasingly irrelevant and that it was going to be more of a digital property like a video that was going to define your candidacy. So it was more about your potential versus your experience. So that was take the interview. And obviously that business did really, really well. We amassed well over 200 clients that utilize our product for screening candidates worldwide. We've had well over 2 million interviews conducted on the system the last time I checked. And so it's been a pretty exciting adventure. And then, ConveyIQ evolved from the take the interview product. So, working with a lot of these organizations, I really strove to understand what were some other pain points that they faced in their recruitment process. And clearly, as the market changed from being more employer driven to candidate driven, we found that there was this desire to deliver an amazing candidate experience, but clearly not enough resources to do that when you're talking about a large number of people applying to a position. So how do you make every single candidate feel like a unique snowflake? How do you communicate effectively, not let any candidate fall into a black hole? How do you improve the screening process, improve the scheduling process, which is so painful? And then how do you do this in a comprehensive way to showcase the employer brand and measure that and optimize that? And so that was the initial impetus to start thinking through a better way to enable the candidate experience, but at the same time, automate a lot of the manual administrative tasks that recruiters have to do to engage those candidates. And so that was ConveyIQ, and ConveyIQ was born actually in 2017, so very late. So it was a pretty new concept. And we were in beta last year with some amazing early adopters, and we released the first version of this platform in January of this year. So that is the exciting story.
That is such a nice abridged, condensed version. That was awesome. And I totally understand now why this is happening. This is the parallels are so present. I think going past the resume, working in diversity at Citi, Danielle, obviously there's so much to kind of dig in here. So I really want to talk about what this is going to look like and how this came to be. But, I think, John, it might be helpful actually for our listeners. So much of our content isn't necessarily about Entelo. It's about other people in our space. It's about other practitioners and thought leaders. So I'd love to kind of take a step back. Can you also do a brief abridged kind of history of why did you form Entelo? I know candidate experience was not really even a term back then. So talk to me about forming Entelo and kind of how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, I think the underlying themes are similar, which is seeing a problem in the market, being able to go after that problem. In 2010, I was an entrepreneur in residence at Battery Ventures, and I was looking at a lot of different opportunities. And as part of that, I spent a lot of time sitting down with CEOs and executives at companies and asking them, what are your pain points? And I was an EAR. I didn't really have anything to do all day long. And so I figured I could build some positive karma helping out some other people. And so as I had these conversations, it was apparent to me that most of the challenges that were faced by most of the fastest growing companies were challenges around hiring. And so with that, I said, this is interesting, because if you could solve that problem or help to solve that problem, you'd probably be able to create a pretty big business. And this was around the time that we were seeing a lot of new websites come online. Twitter was getting big, Quora was getting big, GitHub was becoming incredibly popular for software engineers. And it occurred to us that there was so much data on all these sites about the types of people that these people I was trying to help were trying to hire, but no one had put that data together in a way that was digestible and user-friendly for your typical recruiter. And so that was really the V1 of the company, was to do that. And then I think where we've evolved over the years and where the synergy with ConveyIQ is extremely high is to become more of a system of workflow around engaging with those candidates at the top of the funnel. So where we see a lot of our customers having incredible success with Entelo today is to not just use Entelo to find somebody, but to actually go in, engage with those people, track those engagements, optimize that engagement process. And that's really where Entelo is, I think, most successful. And that's when we've looked at ConveyIQ and their technology, where they're successful as well. They just happen to be successful further down the funnel than where Entelo sits. And so the opportunity to bring the two companies together to basically have an end-to-end solution to manage and optimize all of your engagement with candidates is really, it was a tremendous opportunity, and one that Danielle and I started talking about probably about a year ago. Danielle came out to San Francisco and was on a panel at our summit, at the Recruit Automation Summit, and we went out to lunch one day. This is at least my version of the story, Danielle. You can tell me if it differs on your end. But kind of started to talk about what would happen if what we did and what Convey did were to be the same entity, and that conversation emerged very organically over a period of months and led to where we are today, which is really kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, actually, Danielle, is that accurate? Did John just hit that out of the park, or was there some difference there?
No, I think he did a good job of summarizing it. I mean, honestly, I didn't know what he wanted to go out to lunch to really talk about. I mean, John and I have known each other for, I guess, it's been about 5 years. So I've always really respected John and considered him a really close friend, someone whose product I respected. I respected his leadership, how he scaled Entelo. And so it wasn't unusual for John to be like, hey, I'm in New York, or you're in SF, let's grab a drink, or let's grab lunch. And so, I guess I just thought it was like a standard, let's talk about the industry. What's interesting about John and I guess our conversations historically is that I've never met someone who I've been more on the same page with about where the market is going, which is really exciting, because when you're talking to someone and they're, obviously seeing a lot of the same things that you're seeing, I mean, number one, as entrepreneurs, I do feel like sometimes we see things a little bit far ahead, and sometimes we are a little bit futuristic in our thinking, like full scale automation from the opening of a job description or the opening of a rec to hire is like a pretty crazy concept. And so, to meet someone who you consistently feel doesn't think you're completely insane is a good feeling. And, I used to go to John's dinners that he would host in San Francisco and New York, and there would be such great people. I always saw people I knew, but also established new relationships. So I just really respected John because he's way more extroverted than me, and he's a connector and a really great CEO, and also someone who saw the world very similarly to the way I did.
I will definitely dispute the extroversion comment, but other than that, I think that's all accurate and appreciated. And one thing to mention is, when we went to lunch last summer, I don't know that I envisioned this. And I think what has been awesome about the last 12 months is to watch this emerge very organically, to the point where so many of the pieces fit so well together, from the product vision, from some of the customer synergies that we saw, from just even how our leadership teams fit together. It was literally one of those things where I consistently was like, wow, this is kind of meant to be. And I think what's great about that is that I think the best mergers and acquisitions are the ones that you don't force to happen, the ones that just happen because it makes sense. It makes sense for the customers. It makes sense for the employees. It makes sense, we think, for the industry. And that's probably maybe the biggest thing, and something that we should definitely talk about is, where we do think this industry is going, and how this acquisition and the combination of forces, how this really impacts that industry, because we're still relatively small. I mean, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We've done a lot of great work, but there are companies 10 times, 100 times our size in the space. But I think what's really neat about what's happening today is that the this is the first time that something like this has happened. I mean, there have been plenty of acquisitions, plenty of mergers where it's someone's technology bolted onto someone else's technology. An ATS buys a CRM. Great. Now you've got an ATS with CRM. That's great. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But what we're doing today is truly the first time in the history of HR tech where you will now have the opportunity to manage end-to-end the engagement of a candidate through all of the life cycle. And if you look at the biggest companies in our space, there's top of funnel companies like LinkedIn and Indeed and ZipRecruiter. They do a wonderful job of managing top of funnel. But once people apply for a job, those companies kind of tend to step to the side and the ATS takes over, and now it's the ATS that's managing the interactions. And the ATSs do a great job and increasingly have CRM functionality, but they don't really play at the top of the funnel. And so the opportunity for Entelo and ConveyIQ to come together to literally do end-to-end management of all those interactions, it is, I think, the first time that you've seen anything like this in our industry. And we plan and are already in the process of playing nicely with the ATSs, with the CRMs, with the other companies at the top of the funnel in terms of sourcing. So this isn't an Entelo or something else kind of question. You'll be able to use Entelo with any technology stack that you're leveraging, but this is the first time that you'll be able to use one system to be able to track the engagement from that very first touch point that you have with a candidate, which is where our customers use Entelo today, all the way through the application process. And then something that I think is incredibly exciting is the work that we're going to do on post-apply and that opportunity to recycle all the candidates that have come through the process over the years that generally speaking are stuck somewhere in a database that you can't reach, that you don't know about. And how do you surface them at the relevant time and the right types of people for the roles you're trying to fill? And that's something we're going to be able to do for customers as well. So I think it's a really neat opportunity. And I actually want to have Danielle weigh in too, because there's no one that I've met that's more passionate about product in this space than Danielle. And so I'd love to hear from you, Danielle, kind of your vision for the companies coming together and what you're excited about.
Yeah, well, my belief is that right now, talent acquisition still handles a tremendous amount of administrative tasks, and there are a ton of inefficiencies. And the essence of recruiting is building relationships, understanding your candidates, being able to truly understand the organization and match your relationships, your connections, the candidates that you source to the right opportunities. And it's become increasingly more difficult as the rec load has gotten larger and larger for recruiting teams. And so it's forced some organizations to outsource the recruiting function or to do things less optimally. I want to turn every single recruiter into a superhuman. I want to be able to, with Entelo and ConveyIQ connected, I want to give them all of the toolkits and the science behind how to optimally recruit at their fingertips so that when they open up a job description, that job description is optimized, it's inclusive, it works to attract. The next step would be searching your databases, whether it's Entelo or it's inside of your ATS or your CRM, for the optimal matches based on that optimized job description, screening those candidates so that recruiters have a baseline filter of who they're going to engage with, encouraging those candidates to apply or to at least raise their hand to have a conversation with a recruiter, and then automate the scheduling of that interaction. After they apply, being able to track that engagement, not leaving them in a black hole, screening them further, moving them forward in the process, all interconnected stage by stage, as well as then scheduling them for multiple different formats of interviews, whether that's on-site with the managers or even a sequential interview day. So handling all of those complexities and those touch points and making the candidate feel as though they're getting this VIP experience, but it's interjected with very progressive technology moving this process forward. You can expedite your time to fill, you can optimize your candidate quality, you can optimize your entire day, and who doesn't want to be able to focus on the top priority things and the top priority candidates? So that's what I see. I see this as completely changing the landscape of how organizations recruit, and they won't need to rely on external sources to do a lot of the work that fundamentally I know they love doing.
I think that's great. The idea that this is not just a bolt on, this is not like a this or that. It's saying, okay, there are all of these things that can exist kind of symbiotically. And it's about making sure that entire conversation, that entire process is coherent, is fluid, and again, makes it so that it's human and it's not these disjointed processes that are the result of really siloed pieces of technology.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's what every company that we talk to right now wants, and certainly that we want to provide. So we're very excited to show the technology to folks. And we've got a bunch of customers on our end that we know are very excited about Convey's technology and to be able to leverage that in conjunction with what they're already leveraging with Entelo. And we know the same is true, that many of Convey's customers are going to be very excited to try out Entelo. So, Danielle and I will be, circling the country, circling the globe, I guess, in the coming months, and spend a lot of time with our customers and really getting embedded with them and making sure that we're building the joint roadmap with the companies in parallel with their needs. And so we're excited for that. We'll be at a bunch of the big trade shows in the fall, HR Tech for sure, and some other ones, and definitely excited to give folks demos and certainly to entertain any questions people have. And we'll also, at some point, I'm sure, Danielle, we'll have the next Recruiting Automation Summit, and we'll go back to kind of where it all began and do it up different this time and in a big kind of very powerful way.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you both so much for joining today. And if you are at all interested in learning more about this acquisition and the excitement around it, obviously you can go to Entelo.com. We'll have a press release that will have gone out as well, along with a bunch of social and blog and all that good stuff. So feel free to chime in. We'd love to have conversations and excited for what's next. Danielle, John, thank you both so much for visiting.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.